Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second free virtual workshop series. Today, we're going to be going a little bit more in depth on clicker training. So this one is about combining skills. We're going to talk about setting up a really effective training environment, how to avoid fatigue, how to know when you've mastered skills, and when you can start putting them together in different ways. So before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to, Before we dive into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to just talk about if you have any questions and you're joining in live through the Google Meet, go ahead and type your questions into the chat. If you're watching this as on YouTube later on, go ahead and drop your questions in the comments or head over to our Facebook forum to ask those questions. All of these things are going to be linked in the comments, as well as resources to things that I mentioned, such as tutorials on these basic clicker training skills, how to do them more in depth. So without further ado, let's get started. So we are going to be, like I said, talking about how to get more effective clicker training sessions going, and we're going to start with just setting up your clicker training session. So if you haven't already looked into Clicker Training 101, that was our previous week's workshop, that's up on YouTube under our free virtual workshop playlist, so go ahead and check that out, and that will also be linked in the description. So setting up a effective clicker training environment means that you want to be in a space where it's just you and the cat you're working on. So if you have a lot of cats in your household, like I do, I tend to direct all the cats outside, either using a comb or even just scattering some kibble or some treats on the ground, and then calling in whichever cat I'm going to work with. And in the environment, you want to have enough space to do the work and minimal distractions. What that means is you don't want to have a TV on and running in the background, no other noise, no music. Try and not have anything really moving around, that sort of thing. If you have young children, it might not be the most ideal to have them running around in the same space when you're starting the clicker training process until they've mastered the skills. And we'll go into what mastery of skills looks like. So right now, I actually have a lot of floor space in front of me, which you'll see later on when I'm starting to do some of the skills with Bali today. And there's no other cats in here except for her. And so we have a lot of opportunity to work one-on-one. The next thing I want to get into is knowing something that's really important, and I don't think it's talked about often enough with clicker training, is, how long do you do these sessions with your cats and how to know when it's time to end. I don't know if we'll see signs of fatigue with Bali today. She's a cat who has one of the highest endurances for clicker training here. But when she started, just like any cat who starts, they have about a 5 to 10 second endurance, which sounds really low, but it's really important that when you're doing clicker training sessions or any sort of training session with your cat, that you're avoiding getting to the point of fatigue. It's okay if you get there. You probably will hit those points of fatigue in the very beginning. Some signs are if the cat's response time starts to slow down, it takes a lot longer for them to respond to the cue you're asking. Other signs can be if they're getting distracted, if they start walking away or looking around or investigating other things in their environment. If you're doing something like if you're doing a series of skills and you're asking them to return to a spot. For example, with Bali, you'll see when I demonstrate that she's going to be on her place, I'll ask her to do a skill and I don't offer her another skill until she returns to her place. If they're slow on returning to the place, or if they get distracted, or if they don't return to their place, these are all signs of fatigue, that they are tired out, that they are done. And so you definitely want to stop immediately if you start seeing those signs, and then start to learn what the preemptive signs are or how long that is. It's really great to keep a log or even set a timer on your phone, like a stopwatch, and take a look at, okay, my cat got tired at this time. Okay, that was, a minute. That was 2 minutes. So next time I'm going to do 50% of that and do 30 seconds or just do 1 minute. So we really want to keep sessions short and sweet And that way we ensure that they're always fun and we avoid frustration. So that's another key point that we want to get into in setting up successful clicker training sessions is avoiding frustration and fatigue. I mean, think about when you're tired. Like I am the most irritable person when I don't have enough sleep or when I'm tired or I'm burnt out on doing something. So that's a really easy way to avoid frustration is to just avoid fatigue and keep sessions really short. And then you can do more. You can do multiple sessions in a day. I advise that you do like at least 30 to 60-minute breaks between sessions. Honestly, you'll probably do longer if you want to break it up throughout the day anyways, but that way you give cats time to rest and recuperate and give their brains a break, because that's what's working really hard when you do things like clicker training. So fatigue is something we want to avoid, and that helps to avoid frustration, which is what we're getting into next. Frustration is something that can easily happen during clicker training sessions. And I'll demonstrate a few of those after this with Bali as well. When we're, going into combining skills, I'll point these things out. But there are a lot of ways that a cat can experience frustration and that you as a human can experience frustration. And those are things we really want to aim to avoid. The first thing that I cannot emphasize enough is you can end the session at any time. There's kind of this concept that if you ever did sports as a kid, you might have where the coach pushed you to, okay, just do one more rep or just do this one thing, do this skill, do that jump, do this lap. And once you finish it, you're done. And we'll end on a good note. Okay, throw that concept out the window. We are ignoring that completely. There's no such thing as this good note that we're going to push to end to. That is a surefire recipe to create a really frustrating experience for both you and the cat. So if you're working on a skill and it's not happening, your cat isn't offering the behavior that you're asking for, and you've tried it once, twice, 3 times, and you're not getting the results you're looking for, 3rd time's a charm, end the session there, or move to a skill that you know your cat knows with confidence, even if that's just loading the clicker. So move to something to see if the cat still has any endurance after that experience, which they might not, because sometimes when you're asking for a skill that they're not offering, they're confused, and that can also tire them out quickly. So 3 times max at attempting anything, and then pause, either transfer to another skill that you know your cat knows, or just end the session and just be like, okay, great, we're done. And that's totally fine. That's great, actually, because you're avoiding going deeper into frustration. And that also gives you a time to say, okay, why didn't that work? And we'll get into that too, about understanding why sometimes cats might not be offering you the behavior you're asking for. So you want to be sure that you aren't trying to push. If it's not working, let it go, move on to something you know works, or end the session. Another thing to avoid frustration is clarity. So I talk a lot with my hands. That's something you want to avoid when you're in session with cats, is because they're going to be looking at your hands as we're teaching them different cues. That point means this is high five, this is fist bump. So something I always tell people to start off with is either cross your hands and keep them kind of on each other's hips, unless you're using them, or keep them like this right on your hips, and only bring them out when you're using them. So if you're offering a cue, then you remove, then you can reward with the other hand. This helps avoid confusion, especially with cats who are newer to clicker training and are really focused on your hands, trying to decipher what you're asking them to do, because we're teaching them that we're communicating with our hands. So if you're doing what I'm doing and you're talking a lot with your hands and being very expressive, or if you're fidgeting and moving around a lot, or your hands are here, or you're kind of shifting your lap positions a lot, that can all be really distracting and really confusing to a cat who's trying to decipher every single thing that our hands do, because they're focused on them. So when you're starting your training session, whether you're sitting on the floor like I am, whether you're sitting on a couch, on a bed, find a position to sit that's comfortable for you, and then keep your hands still. This is especially important when introducing new skills. So find a place to keep them on your hips, keep them across your body. This one actually works better for me because I'm literally pinning my hands down and I like to move them a lot. Or resting here. If you want, they can be resting on your thighs, but even here on your knees can be really confusing. We want to kind of keep our hands out of sight until we're offering that cue and that signal. So really important in your setup and in your practice that you're aware of your own body's positioning to avoid confusion. Because really the two things that lead to frustration are fatigue and confusion. And so we're going to aim to avoid all of those things when we go to our setup and our training. So again, if you have any questions on any of these things, please drop them in the messenger if you're live, or in the comments if you're watching this as a recording on YouTube. So we're going to move on to the next steps in the segments here, which are really exciting, is demonstration of skills. So Bali is going to be our demo cat today. I'm just going to set up so you can see her. And this is where we're going to start talking about all these things that I mentioned and how to recognize them. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate a few basic skills with Bali. This is going to be her place for today that she's going to return to on her clean loops. You can see she's already getting ready for it. So again, Bali is very advanced. She's done a lot of work here with us. Is this sliding princess? Yeah. She's done a lot of work on these clicker training skills. So you're going to see a lot of advanced clean loops and combinations, and we'll talk about that quickly. And also, side note, yes, this is an open carrier with a towel in it. You'll see a lot of this in our future sessions on carrier training. I just wanted to give a visual demonstration of how you can incorporate it into your clicker training as well. So starting with her in her place, I'm going to bring her out for a skill that we reviewed last week. Go back to your spot. Thank you. Back in. Great, which is point. So I'm going to point, click, reward with the other hand. So a lot of questions that we get is, how do we know when a skill is mastered? Well, I like to say, I'm going to toss away to redirect her away from me so I can repeat the skill. If they do the skill 5 times in a row, 3 sessions in a row, you can consider it mastered. So what does that mean? Well, that means I just did the skill with her twice, 3 times, and I'm tossing away in different directions now. 4 times. And you can see her response time is the same every single time, 5 times. So I've done this skill with her 5 times, and then I would want to repeat that 3 more sessions to know that the skill is mastered. So I can leave it there at 5 times. I don't really need to do more than that. In fact, for many cats, that would be the entire session right there. Like I said, Bali has been clicker training for over a year. She has the most endurance, which is why I chose her for this virtual tutorial, because I know she can last the entire time, but we have built up there in slow 5 to 10 second increments. It has been a long and slow process. So once you've mastered a skill, you've done it 5 times in session 1, 5 times in session 2, and 5 times in session 3, that's when you know you can combine it. And again, we're going to have links in the YouTube posting for breakdowns of how to teach all the skills we demonstrate here, because that's a whole separate video. This video is going to be focused on how to combine basic skills together to create a more complex training experience. Wait, Bali. Do we want to do third place? Sorry, I'm setting this up because I realized that my carrier is sliding on the ground, which is quite annoying. So we're going to just use the base on a piece of towel for her spot. Inside. All the way. Good girl. So once you have a skill that you've mastered, such as the point, you can start to combine them. So I'm going to do a demonstration of combining point and paw touch. So this is only applicable if you've mastered both point and then paw touch. So when she comes, and then I can offer her paw touch. Another really common one that we do is our high five, which is a combination. So once she's mastered sit and high paw touch, high five, I can go sit, high five. And so there's our two skills in one, because of course I can also have her follow and then do a high five from either standing or sitting, her choice. So these are all skills that she's mastered that I can then combine, and you can even combine more than one. Again, every skill must be mastered, must have been done 5 times for 3 sessions in a row before you can combine it with another one. And then you can build up, start by combining it just with one other mastered one. And once you've created a chain such as, Rally, good girl, yes. So now she's returning to her spot, and I can offer her low five and fist bump and reward her for that. So once you've done something like that, back in your spot, you can then, let's say we do that, we do low five and fist bump. And note that when I'm chaining skills together, this is called back chaining, that I'm clicking after the last skill, because the click marks the end of the behavior. So low five, I don't click, fist bump, I click, and then I reward with my other hand. So now the signal that the click, yes, you did the behavior, and it's the end of the series, comes at the very end. Low five and fist bump. So now if I've done that combination, low five and fist bump, 5 times per session for 3 sessions in a row, I can add on to it. We have low five. Can you go back in your spot? Thank you. We have low five, we have fist bump, and then high five. And so now I'm adding a third skill on to chain it to 3. Low five, fist bump, high five. Good girl. And you can apply this to anything. So keep track of the combinations you're doing to build upon them gradually. Don't just go in and throw them all together. So we don't want to go ahead and just start throwing 4 or 5 mastered skills together into one long chain. We want to build them up like this. Low five, fist bump, high five. Good girl. So I'm going to give her a break because she had a slightly slower response time there. So I'm just going to toss a few treats away for her to go scavenge and find and give her a break. Also, part of that was because I was talking to you guys. And so that is interrupting our flow of our normal training session. So I'm going to tell her for now that we're all done and give her a break. So I know that was probably pretty subtle, but feel free to rewind this and rewatch it to see how she had a slightly slower response then. Also, I probably was moving my hands around, and also I'm talking to you guys, so my focus isn't completely on her, which is confusing to her because she's wondering what I want her to do next, because she's just waiting now and trying to figure it out. So, which is fine. I'm going to just continue to toss a few kibbles away so she can go find them while I explain the next thing that we're starting to back chain and creating what we call clean loops, which is a really exciting thing to start working on. And you saw a little bit of it with Bali here when she kept returning to her place. So if you haven't already, in order for this to make sense, you're going to have to place train or station train your cat, which again, there's going to be a tutorial in the linked in the description for YouTube. And once you have that, you can use anything as a station. For example, today we're using the bottom of a small carrier. So when they're in, you start by just rewarding them for being in their carrier. And then I'm going to ask her to come out for a trick, reward. And then the very next behavior you're going to ask them to do is go back to their station. All the way. And you're going to reward that. And then you're going to ask them for a trick. Good girl. Then you will direct them back to their station. And again, we're just chaining 2 things together. This time it happens to be paw touch and stationing and reward. So I'm just building up a combination here, which is why we're rewarding them separately, rewarding her for the trick, waiting for her to finish doing that, and then we're going to direct back to the carrier and reward. This is a little bit different than waiting to reward at the end of both behaviors, because I'm not building just one skill combination. So in this scenario, I can mix up the tricks that I'm asking her to do outside, and then I direct her back. So I might ask for a low 5 instead. There we go. And then I'm going to direct her back to the carrier or her station. Double click and reward. And then I can ask her for something different. I can point. The idea here is to build up that behavior and that pattern of returning to their spot. And you can tell she's like, yes, okay, got it. This is our loop. This is our cycle as she picks up the pace. Low 5. Good girl. And you want to build up the pattern of returning to their spot. Again, to master this behavior, you're going to want to repeat it with any trick on the outside, any cue, and a return to the spot 5 times in a row for 3 sessions. And once you've done that, you can start phasing out rewarding the return to spot. So I can do a trick. There was a noise. There we go. Now I'm going to ask her to return to her spot. Then I'm going to do a trick on the spot, like a low 5 here on the spot, and reward her. So here we're now back chaining spot plus another trick in the spot to train that return to the spot. So I'm going to have her wait in her spot. I'm going to ask her to come out for a trick, reward that trick, bring her back to her spot. Yes, I know you hear people coughing. Offer a trick in her spot and then reward her. And it doesn't always have to be the same trick in her spot or out of the spot for this one. Again, anything you're using here has to be a skill that's mastered. And this is definitely a very advanced skill. I'd say you want to start back chaining at least 4 skills before you do this. Before you start teaching this clean loop behavior. And you can build upon it with a lot of other things. We're going to do a whole tutorial on different approaches to clean loop, how you can use it to benefit carrier training, just the whole gambit of it, and how to improve duration through something called errorless shaping, which is really something that I saved to later in this video because it is an intimidating phrase, this whole concept of the errorless student or errorless shaping. And all it means is that we want to guarantee that the cat is going to do the behavior we ask them to do. For example, I don't want Bali focused on me right now because I'm talking to you guys. So I've scattered kibble across the room so she can go find it and she can go forage for it instead of being fixated on my hands right now. That is an example of errorless shaping. I wanted her away from me and not focused on me. So I sent kibble in that direction away from me so she would focus on that and not me. It's how we can use our environment, our body, the kibble or treats, the luring, to guarantee that the cat is going to do the behavior we want them to do. And if for any reason you ever offer something and the cat is not doing it, and it's a new behavior that you're teaching them, that means you want to take a break, move on to something else, and then afterwards go back and see, how can I better shape this skill? How can I better create an environment that will require the cat to do the behavior in a way that is not forcing the cat physically, but is rather through enticement and shaping of the environment. A great example for this can be something like when we initially teach paw touch, we use a little jar, a small jar with a kibble inside of it for the cat to reach their paw inside of that jar so that they can go ahead. Okay. so that we're teaching them that behavior of the paw going into the jar. For example, I'll use my little kitty demo here for it. So that if we have a jar and we have a kibble in it, we're teaching that behavior of the paw going into the jar, and then we slowly cover our hand over that jar, so then they learn how to touch our hand. The reason we do that approach is to guarantee that they're going to already have that reach behavior. So it's about making things really small and incremental and building upon all of those things. So in teaching even a basic skill like point, we first have to teach the behavior of, oh, go follow the kibble. Okay, so that's what loading the clicker is for. So we can toss kibble or slide it and say, go follow it. Okay, great. Now that you want to follow it, we want to build in our point and get you to follow the kibble, but you're really, and start to connect the point with that behavior of follow. And so we do the point with the kibble, and we build up that way. Again, the tutorial's linked below. You can follow that and see how you can build that up. So that's something we want to keep in mind when we're doing more advanced things as well. So when we're doing things like back chaining things together, creating clean loops, are we making sure that there is no confusion, no mistake, that our environment is allowing for the cat to go to their spot to do these clean loops, and then we're rewarding them. So this is where, when you start to phase out the treats and the reward, and you want this to become what we call the offered behavior, it's something you want to charge at the beginning of your session. So we're getting into a lot of technical terms here, and these are all things that can seem, again, really intimidating, but I promise you they're not. And we're going to release an entire guidebook on these things in the near future, which is really exciting. So when we start doing things at the beginning of our session to build combination behaviors or to build a clean loop, we want to first, at the beginning of your session, charge the behaviors you're going to be working with. So for example, if I'm going to work with low five, fist bump, and high five, I would want to do them individually before combining them. So I'm going to say low five. We're going to reward that. And I would do that maybe 3 times, 3 to 5 times. And then fist bump, and we'd reward it. And then I do that maybe 3 to 5 times. And that might be it. That might be the end of your session. Again, you're going to have to build up endurance before you can start doing these combinations, and you want to pay attention to signs of fatigue. So after you've done low five and high five, oh, Sally, come here. I know you see the kibble. Go get it. Apologies. I'm stepping on the computer and turning off our live stream. So once you've built up things like that and charged the behavior of the low five, and we can see Bali's getting a little bit fatigued here. So we're going to wrap up our training session here with this in a clean loop and the high five. You can then do the combination once you've charged those behaviors of low five to high five. So charging a behavior is really key when you start back chaining things or combining 2 behaviors together, because it allows you to practice them in isolation. And then the cat's like, oh, I got this. I did the low five. I did the high five already. You're asking for low five. You're asking, or low five and fist bump. You're asking for low five and you're asking for fist bump. Great. Fine. Low five, fist bump. I've already practiced. I've already warmed up. And you're going to experience less frustration from the cat being confused that, why aren't you rewarding me for my low five? And you're asking me to do something else. So a low five. Low five. Low five. Are you fixated? You do fist bump first? Okay. So for example, that's a great example, not of airless shaping issue, but it's a skill that Bali knows. She knows low five. She's choosing not to do it because she's getting a little bit tired here, and she prefers to reach rather than reach on the ground. So that's fine. I'm going to respond to that. Like I said, if it was any other time, I would end the session here. I would have actually ended it probably about 2 minutes ago when her responses started slowing down. But for Bali right now, I'm just going to give her a little bit of a break with that scattering of kibbles so she can recharge and then come back and we can work some more on that combining. So the examples that we were talking about right now of minimizing frustration. Again, everything in your clicker training session is going to be all about keeping it fun, super easy. And to do that, we want to avoid frustration and avoid fatigue, which also contributes to frustration. So doing something like this with a break with a more advanced cat is a great way to give her a break and then have her continue, because she's working today to make this video for y'all. And charging or loading behaviors at the very beginning of your session that you plan to combine is a great way to build confidence in those behaviors and avoid frustration when you combine them together, or confusion from the cat saying, okay, why am I not getting a click and reward after each behavior? If you charge them up first, or load up those behaviors first, rewarding them individually, then you put them together, you've already got that muscle memory going for the cat. So the cat is going to respond to each cue more readily, more quickly, and then get the reward at the end. And our goal is to get that muscle memory buildup, so they're essentially responding to those cues before they really even realize, like, oh wait, you haven't clicked and rewarded. So another thing on that note is that you want to practice your cues before you start combining them. So you've seen me offer a bunch of different cues today, a bunch of different behaviors, which can be really confusing as a human to be like, okay, point, low five, fist bump, high five. And if you saw, hopefully, if I was doing a good job, my clears were really clear. There wasn't a confusion between, oh, low, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want to do. Oh, I wanted to do this. Oh, no, wait, I wanted to do low five. You see how confusing that can be when your hands are kind of all over the place, especially for a cat who's trying to look for that cue. So again, keeping those hands in your lap, if you need to start by having them, folded or at your hips, and then offering a very clear cue one at a time. And again, none of that was confusing to Bali because she's foraging for kibbles over there. So practice without your cat. I know that may sound really weird, but please, please, please practice giving cues without your cat. If it makes you feel better, use a stuffed animal and pretend that you're giving a cue to them. Give it one at a time. Practice giving a cue, removing the cue, rewarding, the timing of everything that we say, the C2, R2. So we cue, click when the animal does the behavior, remove, and reward with the opposite hand. There's a lot of coordination involved here. It's akin, it's nowhere near as intense as learning sign language, but you are learning another form of communication. And it's important that your communication is clear, which means it's really important that your hand signals are clear. So that's really important to also avoid frustration through confusion, as well as starting your session with the skills that you want to work on in combination, but doing them individually. So again, we'll take a minute for Bali to just recharge. Speaking of fatigue, I'm going to check on any questions right now during that. Cats are watching intensely. And, oh, am I clicking? Yes, I have been clicking this entire time. I apologize if the audio isn't picking up on that. Sometimes the audio of a click can be really hard for my computer sound equipment to pick up. It wants to isolate it, thinking it's background noise. And part of that is the Google Meet software too, that really tries to create background noise. I will go through and edit this video probably in the next couple weeks and reload it with, overlaying the clicks where they're supposed to be so that it's clear, so you can watch the recording for that. Because I am clicking at the end of every combination right before I give her a reward. So we're going to finish off here. Let me check if there's any other questions. Beautiful. So we're going to wrap up here with just a clean loop. And then I'm checking, yes. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here now that Bali's had a minute to recharge. She's interested in coming back to me. I just slid a few more kibbles out of her way. We're going to finish up here on building that clean loop structure and continuing to build it from where we left off with her. So where we left off with her was asking her to do a skill outside, directing her back in, and asking her to do a skill, and then rewarding. So we reward the outside skill, direct her in, skill in place, and reward again. So we're doing a combination of inside or on her place and a skill in place with a click and reward. So we're going to continue to then just load this reward and in place. High five. And just do a series. I like to say you want to then do this for one session, just all your skills on that place. So one session, as long as you want to go, do this 3 sessions in a row where you're just doing all the skills in place on the mat. So we're only doing skills that they can do in place. This means you won't be doing things like follow. You can maybe do some things like no stiff, but really where it's going to be at is your low 5, your paw touch, your fist bump, your high 5. You can do sit, you can do look. You can do skills like that as well. Anything that doesn't require the cat to physically move. If they step out, that's great. Just redirect them back in and offer a skill. And that's all you're going to want to do. Again, for an entire session, do all your skills in one place. Do this for 3 to 5 sessions. That was a combination skill that I just did in place of sit and high 5, bringing her up. You can do things like that too if they've already mastered that combination skill on its own outside of being on a mat. And you're going to build this up. You're just going to build up the behavior of doing all the skills in place. Low 5. Good girl. Beautiful. We'll do another combination of a sit, fist bump. Good girl. Beautiful. So you're going to continue. I'm just loading up this behavior. And then in your next sessions, you'll charge this behavior by doing a few skills in place and then offer a skill out. Reward it. And then you're going to wait. You're going to wait for about 3 to 5 seconds. Just count 1, 2, 3, and then redirect them back in. There we go. Then offer a few more skills in place. Paw touch. Good girl. Sit. Okay. Good girl. A few more skills in place. And then we're going to direct them out with a skill outside. Tap. Are we done? The birds just started chirping out the window, so this might be the end of today's workshop with Bali. 1. Go ahead and look at the place that you want her to go. And 2, 3, direct back in, offer a skill, and reward. Continue to build this up, giving them a little bit of a pause to wait for them to go back to their space, doing a skill outside, rewarding, looking at the place you want them to go, just counting either out loud or in your head to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Directing them back in and charging the skill. And we're just going to repeat this. This is going to take time. Sometimes you can see, like, for example, Bali's orientation. She's sitting in front of me and looking at me because the past few times we've been doing this training, her place has always been in front of me. And what that tells me, and is a great example, is that I need to practice with her place not being in front of me more often, because I've accidentally taught her the cue is the orientation of my body. And this is the last thing I really want to end on. I think this is a great example of how we can accidentally train things that we don't mean to train, which means if, for example, I'm like, oh, I thought my cue was the position of the carrier. Well, nope, it's not where the carrier is right now. She's associating the cue as the position of my body and saying, oh, the past few times we've done this, I've sat directly in front of you. So that's where I'm going to sit now between behaviors. And so it's important for me to then say, okay, I'm going to, instead of just sitting here and waiting for her to go into that carrier, I'm going to build up that association in that direction of her going into the carrier. And I might even say, okay, let me make it a little bit easier. Maybe we'll start with moving the carrier back in front of me next session. And then I'll start moving my body around. So this is what I mean by errorless shaping, and by making sure we're being clear. And if the cat's not offering us the behavior we want, like in this case, she's not just walking back to the carrier in between cues, I'm going to go for a signal that I know she knows, which is, well, I can always direct her back to the carrier and then reward her in there. So to avoid frustration, I'm not just going to sit here and be like, okay, I'm going to wait for 2 minutes until you go into the carrier. I'm going to instead direct her and offer her cues that she's a master of already. Good girl. And then to build this up and make it easier, I'm going to move this in front of me and say, okay, well, clearly I need to work on this more gradually, because how I started it was not for a workshop. So now she's entered into the carrier of her own. I can reward her. I can ask her to come out. You come out. Girl. And then I want to see if she'll come. Yeah, so now she'll come right back in for her clean loop, because she knows that this is how we've been practicing it. So this is a really great example. I'm really happy this happened, of how you can accidentally teach cues unintentionally. Like clearly, because for the last 5 sessions that we've done, I've just sat in front of her instead of moving around. And a lot of that is because I just was tired and it was raining and I didn't feel like moving around. So now she's really associated that she's supposed to be in front of me in order to get her next cue. So whether it's on the floor or on a station, her cue right now is not this thing on the ground. It's my body. It's my orientation. Good girl. So to build from this, I'll start doing things like, okay, great, you're here. So I'm going to turn this way, and then I'm going to offer you a signal in here. See, she already was trying to go to in front of my body, so I'm intercepting her with a signal here, loading up the training with her doing it to the side of my body. I'll bring her out. There we go. Good girl. So you can see how now I'm saying, okay, we're going to start with the signal that you know, which is you being in front of me. I'm going to slightly change it to try and teach her that this is the cue I'm asking for right now, not the orientation of my body. And we'll get into that a lot more. It's also explained a lot more in the mat training and the stationing tutorial about how to let the mat be the cue instead of your body. And like you saw, Bali's been trained, I've been working with her for over a year, and even so you can accidentally retrain things in ways unintentionally. So this is just a constant back and forth communication exercise, which is what makes it so wonderful, which is what makes it so great for bonding and for getting deeper connections with your cats, and what makes it so, fun and dynamic and interesting. So we are going to wrap up today's session there. I wanted to just say thank you so much for joining in today. If you have any questions at all, please check out the resources that are going to be in the YouTube description link, as well as drop comments here or on our Facebook forum. And we look forward to seeing you guys at our next virtual workshop. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.